An impossible phenomenon erupted on Caloris Prime, a catastrophic lumen surge, instantly silenced. And the one creature who stopped it wasn't a guardian, wasn't a telepath, just a human who refused to step back. But why did the impossible obey someone built entirely from stubbornness and emotion? Tell me where you're watching from. Subscribe to help this universe grow. And get ready. Our story begins now. Caloris Prime looked like someone had dropped a city into the sky and forgotten to bring it back down. Jonas Halvern pressed his forehead against the transport window, watching suspended platforms drift through mountain fog like lost islands. Glass bridges connected them, thin as promises, trembling with every gust of cold wind that swept through the valleys below. Beautiful, he thought, and completely terrifying. He had been on the planet for 3 weeks now, working maintenance on the lower district platforms. The job was simple: check structural integrity, replace worn cables, avoid bothering the locals, especially that last part. Calorinos did not like being bothered. They moved through their suspended cities with an elegance that made Jonas feel like a bear in a ballet. Tall, slender, with skin that shifted between shades of blue and silver depending on the light. They never touched, not by accident, not on purpose. When two Calorinos passed each other on a narrow bridge, they would slow, turn slightly, ensure at least a foot of distance remained between them. Jonas had made the mistake of offering a handshake on his second day. The reaction had been immediate. The Calorino engineer had recoiled as if Jonas had pulled a weapon, and the whispers started. Humans, emotionally loud, physically intrusive, inappropriate for sensitive environments. He learned to keep his hands to himself after that. The Bixo district, where he worked, was different from the pristine upper platforms. Down here, the buildings leaned a little more, the paint peeled, and the locals tolerated the presence of off-worlders because someone had to fix the infrastructure nobody else wanted to touch. Humans were good at dirty work, apparently. Jonas did not mind. Invisible suited him just fine. He was calibrating a stabilizer on Platform 18 when he first saw her. She sat alone on a half-abandoned observation deck, her back to a rusted railing, knees drawn up to her chest. Her skin was a shade of blue he had never seen before, opalescent, like light trapped under ice. Her eyes caught the afternoon sun and reflected it back in fractured patterns. But what made Jonas pause was not her appearance. It was the way the air around her moved. It shimmered, pulsed, like heat rising from stone, except the day was cold, and the shimmer came from her. Two Calorinos walked past, saw her, and immediately changed direction. One muttered something Jonas could not quite hear, but the tone was clear. Warning. Fear. Jonas looked back at the woman. She had not moved. Her shoulders trembled slightly, and the shimmer around her intensified. For a moment, Jonas thought she might be cold. Then he realized she was not shivering. She was barely holding herself together. He glanced around. No one else was coming near. No one was even looking at her. It was as if she had become invisible, the same way Jonas felt most days. Except she looked like invisibility was killing her. Jonas checked his tool harness, set down his equipment, and started walking toward the observation deck. A Calorino vendor nearby hissed at him. "Human, do not!" Jonas stopped. "Why not?" "She is second cycle, unstable when alone. Dangerous." "Dangerous how?" The vendor made a gesture Jonas did not recognize. "Energy discharge. If she loses control, the platform could fracture. Do not approach." Jonas looked back at the woman. Her hands were clenched, nails digging into her palms. The shimmer around her was growing brighter. He thought about the vendor's words. Dangerous when alone. That seemed like a really stupid kind of dangerous. Jonas walked onto the observation deck. The woman's head snapped up, eyes wide, and for a split second the air around her flared so bright Jonas had to squint. Then it dimmed, flickered, steadied. She stared at him like he had just appeared out of nowhere. Jonas stopped a few feet away, hands visible, non-threatening. He had no idea what he was doing. He just knew that sitting alone on a cold platform, while everyone avoided you, seemed like a terrible way to spend an afternoon. He sat down. Not close enough to invade her space, but close enough that she was not alone anymore. The woman did not move, did not speak, just kept staring at him with those luminous, fractured eyes. Jonas leaned back against the railing, exhaled slowly, and looked out over the valley. After a long moment, she whispered, "You are not afraid?" Jonas glanced at her. She looked exhausted, sad, like someone who had been holding their breath for too long. He gave a small, tired smile. "You look more sad than dangerous." The shimmer around her faded like smoke dissolving. And for the first time in what might have been years, Salith Varun stopped trembling. They sat in silence for nearly an hour. Jonas did not push, did not ask questions. He just existed next to her, watching clouds drift between the platforms, occasionally checking his datapad for maintenance alerts he was definitely ignoring. Eventually she spoke. Her voice was quiet, careful, like someone testing ice to see if it would hold. "My name is Salith, Jonas." He did not offer his hand this time. "Nice to meet you." Another long pause. Then, almost hesitant, "Why did you sit with me?" Jonas considered the question. "Honestly, you looked like you could use the company." Salith blinked. "You do not know what I am. I know you are sitting alone on a cold platform and nobody will come near you. That seems like a problem." "The problem," she said slowly, "is me." Jonas frowned. "That does not sound right." "It is what they say. Second-cycle calorinas generate unstable energy fields when isolated. If I lose control, I could damage infrastructure, harm people." Her hands tightened in her lap. "So I stay away. It is safer." "Safer for who?" She did not answer. Jonas shifted slightly, turning to look at her properly. "Has that ever actually happened? You losing control and hurting someone?" Salith hesitated. "No, but the sensors always register instability when I am alone too long. The energy builds. They say it is only a matter of time." "Sensors," Jonas repeated. He glanced around the platform, noting the monitoring equipment embedded in the railings. "And those sensors, right now, what are they reading?" Salith pulled up her wrist display, accessing the environmental feed. Her eyes widened slightly. "Stable. Baseline normal." She stared at the numbers like they were written in a language she did not understand. That should not be possible. "Maybe," Jonas said carefully, "the sensors are measuring the wrong thing." Before Salith could respond, her wrist display flashed red, an alert, then another. Within seconds, her entire interface was lighting up with priority notifications. She read them, and her expression shifted from confusion to something close to fear. "The district monitoring station flagged an anomaly. My energy signature dropped below cautionary levels for the first time in months. They are sending someone to investigate." Jonas raised an eyebrow. "Is that bad?" I do not know." Salith stood quickly, smoothing her clothing in a nervous gesture. "No one has ever. This has never happened before." Two officials arrived within minutes, both Calorinos in formal district uniforms. They stopped at the edge of the observation deck, clearly reluctant to approach. The taller one spoke, his tone clipped and professional. "Salith Varun, we received an unprecedented reading from this sector. Are you experiencing a medical emergency?" "No," Salith said quickly. "I'm fine." The official's gaze shifted to Jonas. "You are the human technician, Halvern, correct?" "That is me." "What is your purpose here?" Jonas gestured vaguely at the platform. "Sitting." The official did not look amused. "This area is not designated for recreational use by off-world personnel." "It is not designated for anyone," Jonas pointed out. "That is why it is empty." "Regardless." The official tapped something into his own device. You will report to the District Council office tomorrow at first light. There are questions regarding your proximity to a high-risk individual. Jonas blinked. High risk. The official ignored him, turning back to Salith. We will be monitoring your status closely. If there are further irregularities, protocol may require more direct intervention. They left without waiting for a response. Salith sank back down onto the deck, looking suddenly exhausted. They think you did something to me. Did I? I do not know. She met his eyes, and there was something vulnerable in her expression. All I know is that for the first time in years, I do not feel like I'm about to shatter. Jonas thought about that. About all the rumors, the warnings, the fear. About how everyone had told him she was dangerous, and how the only thing he had actually seen was someone desperately, crushingly lonely. He stood, offering a small smile. Well, if they are going to interrogate me anyway, might as well be worth it. Same time tomorrow. Salith stared at him. You want to come back? Unless you would rather I did not. For a moment she did not respond. Then so quietly he almost missed it. I would like that. Jonas nodded. Then I will see you tomorrow, Salith. As he walked away, he did not see the way the sensors around the platform registered another anomaly, or the way certain officials began drafting reports with words like manipulation and exploitation and dangerous precedent. But Salith saw, and for the first time in a very long time, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The district council office was exactly as welcoming as Jonas expected, which was to say, not at all. 3 council members sat behind a curved desk, their expressions ranging from suspicious to openly hostile. The middle one, an older Calorino with silver-traced skin, gestured to a chair positioned conspicuously far from the desk. Technician Halvern, you understand why you are here? Jonas sat. Not really, no. You engaged in unauthorized contact with a second-cycle Calorina exhibiting chronic energy instability. I sat next to someone who looked sad. The council member on the left leaned forward. Do you understand what emotional lumen is? Jonas shook his head. Second-cycle Calorinas, the older council member explained with exaggerated patience, generate an energy field that amplifies and manifests emotional states. Under normal circumstances, this field remains stable through rigorous emotional control. However, when isolated for extended periods, the field enters a destructive resonance pattern. It feeds on itself, growing more volatile until it discharges catastrophically. So, Jonas said slowly, being alone makes it worse. Correct. Then why is she alone? The 3 council members exchanged glances. The one on the right spoke, her tone clipped. Physical proximity to others can temporarily stabilize the field, but it also creates dependency. The standard protocol is managed isolation with regular monitoring. It is safer for everyone involved. Jonas let that sink in. You keep her alone to prevent the problem that is caused by keeping her alone. You oversimplify a complex medical and cultural issue. Do I? Jonas leaned back. Because it sounds like you are just scared of her. The temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Watch your tone, human. The older council member's voice was cold. What you call fear, we call caution. Salith Varun has been unstable since her second cycle began. The fact that your presence temporarily lowered her readings does not make it safe. It makes it anomalous, and anomalies require investigation. Investigation, Jonas repeated. Is that what this is? This is a warning. You will cease contact with Salith Varun immediately. Continued interference will result in revocation of your work permit and removal from Caloris Prime. Jonas opened his mouth to respond, but the door behind him slid open. Salith walked in. The council members stood immediately, alarm clear on their faces. This is a closed proceeding. You cannot... I can. Salith's voice was steady, but Jonas could see the tension in her shoulders. "This concerns me directly. I have the right to testify." The older council member's expression hardened. "Salith, this is not appropriate. Neither is interrogating someone for showing basic compassion." She moved to stand beside Jonas's chair, and he noticed the faint shimmer beginning to form around her. She was nervous, terrified even, but she was here anyway. Jonas Halvern did nothing wrong. He did not manipulate me. He did not endanger anyone. He sat with me, that is all. "That is not all," the council member on the left said sharply. "Your energy readings have been erratic since his arrival. The data suggests—" "The data suggests," Salith interrupted, her voice trembling now, "that, for the first time in 3 years, I am not on the edge of collapse. He does not control me. He calms me. He sees me. And if that is a crime on this planet, then your laws are wrong." The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, the older council member spoke. "You are dismissed, both of you. But understand this, Technician Halvern. You have been warned. Further contact will not be tolerated." Jonas stood, "And if we ignore that, then you will face consequences, both of you." Outside, the cold wind hit them immediately. Jonas pulled his jacket tighter, glancing at Salith. "You did not have to do that." "Yes," she said quietly, "I did." They walked in silence toward the platform edge, where the view opened up over the valley. Salith stopped, staring out at the horizon. "They have been afraid of me for so long," she said, "that I started being afraid of myself. But when you sat with me yesterday, I felt something I had forgotten. I felt calm." Jonas turned to look at her. "Salith, I know they ordered you to stay away, and I know you should probably listen." She finally looked at him, and there were tears forming in those luminous eyes. "But I am asking you not to." Jonas did not hesitate. "I am not going anywhere." Salith's breath caught. "You mean that?" "I do." And then, slowly, carefully, she reached out and rested her hand on his shoulder. The sensors embedded throughout the platform screamed. Alarms blared. Emergency lights flashed. Every monitoring system within 100 meters registered a critical energy spike. But Jonas felt nothing except the slight weight of her hand, warm and trembling. The alarms cut off abruptly. The energy readings flatlined to 0. And Salith smiled through her tears. They met in places nobody cared about. Abandoned maintenance platforms, half-finished walkways, observation decks scheduled for demolition, places where the sensors were old enough to ignore, and the Calorinos were too busy to notice. Jonas learned things he never expected to learn, like how Calorinos communicated through vibrations in the air itself. Salith tried to teach him, her hands moving in small, precise patterns that created ripples Jonas could barely feel. "It is like touch without touching," she explained, "a way to connect without violating the intimacy of physical contact." Jonas squinted at his own hand, attempting to mimic her movements. The air did absolutely nothing. "I think I am doing this wrong." Salith's lips twitched. "You are doing it very wrong. Helpful, thank you. You are trying to force it. Vibrations respond to emotion, not effort." She demonstrated again, and this time Jonas felt something. A gentle pressure, like standing near a speaker with the volume low. "Feel that? Maybe? I think? That was me telling you to stop thinking so hard." Jonas laughed despite himself. "Does it work on everyone, or just terrible students?" And then something remarkable happened. Salith laughed. It was quiet, brief, almost startled, like she had surprised herself. But it was real. And the shimmer around her, the ever-present indication of her emotional lumen, flared bright for just a moment before settling into something Jonas had never seen before. It looked warm. Salith noticed him staring. "What? Nothing, just... You should laugh more often." Her expression softened. I have not had much reason to. Well, Jonas said, I will just have to be more terrible at learning vibration language then. They were so focused on each other that neither of them noticed the figure watching from the next platform over. Keir Vossen was a research scientist specializing in emotional lumen mechanics. He had been studying second-cycle energy patterns for 15 years, and in all that time, he had never seen readings like the ones Salith Faroon was currently generating. Stable, consistently, impossibly stable. It should not have been possible. Every model, every simulation, every documented case of second-cycle resonance indicated that prolonged stability required either pharmaceutical intervention or complete emotional suppression. Salith was doing neither. The variable was obvious. The human. Keir adjusted his handheld scanner, capturing another data stream. The human was not generating any kind of energy field himself. He was not using technology. He was just sitting there, attempting to learn vibration communication with all the grace of a falling rock. And somehow, Salith's lumen was responding like it had found an anchor. Keir made a decision. He stepped onto the platform. Both of them turned, startled. Salith moved instinctively closer to Jonas, her shimmer brightening with alarm. Easy, Keir said, raising his hands. I am not here to report you. Then why are you here? Jonas asked, his tone cautious. Because I have been monitoring Salith's readings for 6 months, and what I am seeing now should not exist. He pulled up his scanner, displaying the data. Look at this. Baseline stable for 8 consecutive days. No spikes, no resonance warnings. The longest previous record was 43 minutes. Salith stared at the numbers. How long have you been watching me? Since the council assigned me to track potential second-cycle incidents. Keir pocketed the scanner. I am not supposed to tell you this, but they have been building a case to institutionalize you. Mandatory isolation in a controlled facility. The air around Salith went very still. Jonas felt his stomach drop. They cannot do that. They can. They have the medical data to justify it. Keir looked at Salith, and there was something almost apologetic in his expression. But this changes things. If your stability is not an anomaly, if it can be maintained, then the justification disappears. What are you saying? Salith asked quietly. I am saying that I want to help. Officially, I cannot. But unofficially, I can document what is happening here. Build a case that proves the current protocols are wrong. He paused. If you are willing. Jonas looked at Salith. She was trembling again, but not from instability, from hope. What do you need from us? Jonas asked. Time, data, and honesty. Keir met his eyes. Whatever is happening between you two, it is unprecedented. The council will not accept it easily. We will need irrefutable proof. Salith reached for Jonas's hand, and he took it without hesitation. The shimmer around her steadied instantly. We will do whatever it takes, she said. Keir nodded. Then we start now. As he began setting up his equipment, Jonas felt Salith lean slightly against his shoulder. Jonas? Yeah? Why are you not afraid of me? He did not answer right away. Could not, really. Because the truth was complicated, and he was not sure he understood it himself yet. Finally, he just squeezed her hand, and that somehow felt like enough. Salith made a decision that surprised even herself. I want to go to the market, she told Jonas on their 9th day together. Jonas looked up from the cable he was repairing. The market, as in the public market. With people. Yes. Salith, are you sure that is? I have been hiding for 3 years. Her voice was steady, but Jonas could hear the fear underneath. I am tired of being afraid. So they went. The Biso District Market was a chaotic sprawl of vendors and shoppers, suspended platforms connected by swaying bridges, the air thick with the smell of food and the sound of bartering. Calorinos moved through it with their usual careful distance, never quite touching, always aware of the space around them. Salith and Jonas walked side by side, and people stared. At first, it was just looks, curious glances, whispers. Then the whispers got louder. "That is Salith Varun, with the human. Is she insane?" They made it halfway through the market before someone stepped directly into their path. A Colorino male, younger, with the kind of self-righteous anger that came from believing you were protecting people. Behind him, 3 others. Not quite a mob, but close enough. "You should not be here," the male said, looking at Salith. "I have every right to be here," Salith replied quietly. "Not with him." The male's gaze shifted to Jonas. "Everyone knows what you are doing, manipulating her, using her instability for some human agenda." Jonas felt Salith tense beside him. He stepped forward slightly, not aggressive, just present. "I am not manipulating anyone." "Then explain why her energy readings have changed since you arrived. Explain why she suddenly cannot function without you." "Maybe," Jonas said carefully, "she is functioning better because someone finally decided to treat her like a person instead of a problem." The male's expression hardened. "You do not understand our culture." "No," Jonas agreed. "I do not, but I understand loneliness. And I understand that your solution to her condition was to isolate her until she broke. That is not culture. That is cruelty." Silence rippled outward from them. Other shoppers had stopped, watching, waiting. "She is dangerous," the male insisted, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. "She is not dangerous," Jonas said. "You just told her she was for so long that she started believing it. But I have spent every day with her for over a week, and the only thing I have seen is someone who desperately wants to not be alone. If that makes me a manipulator, fine. But it makes you cowards." The male opened his mouth, closed it, looked around at the crowd that had gathered, many of them younger Calorinos, and saw doubt in their faces. One of them, barely more than an adolescent, spoke up. "Is it true that she is more stable now?" Another voice, older. "I heard the readings were baseline for days. If humans can help us, why have we been refusing their presence?" The male who had confronted them looked furious, but the crowd was shifting, questioning. The narrative was cracking. He turned and pushed through the crowd, his companions following. Salith let out a breath she had been holding for what felt like an hour. Jonas touched her arm gently. "You okay?" "I think so." She looked around at the faces still watching them, some curious, some uncertain, but not all hostile. "Did that really just happen?" "I think it did." They finished their walk through the market in relative peace. By the time they returned to Jonas's quarters, Salith was exhausted but smiling. "Thank you," she said, "for defending me." "You do not need to thank me for basic decency." She looked at him for a long moment, and Jonas had the sudden, overwhelming sense that something was about to change between them. Something important. Then his comm unit chirped. It was Kier. His voice was strained, urgent. "Jonas, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "I submitted my data to the council. I thought it would help. I thought if they saw the evidence, they would reconsider the isolation protocols." Jonas felt cold. "What did they do?" "They are using it as proof that you are manipulating her. They claim the stability is artificially induced, that you have created a dangerous dependency, and that separation is necessary for her safety." Kier's voice cracked slightly. "Jonas, they issued an order. You have 48 hours to leave the district. If you refuse, they will forcibly remove you and place Salith in institutional care." The comm went silent. Salith stared at Jonas, her shimmer beginning to fluctuate. "They cannot do that." But they could, and they were. Jonas sat down heavily, his mind racing. "We need to figure this out. There has to be a way to—" "There is not," and Salith's voice was hollow. "They have been looking for a reason to lock me away for years. Now they have one. Salith, you should go." She was shaking now, the shimmer brightening with distress. "Before they punish you more, before they hurt you because of me." Jonas stood, crossed the room and took her hands. The shimmer steadied instantly. "I am not leaving you," he said. "Jonas, 48 hours," he said firmly. "That is enough time to find another way. We are not done yet." Salith looked at him with eyes full of hope and terror in equal measure, and outside, the countdown began. They sat on the edge of an abandoned platform, legs dangling over a drop that would kill them both. Somehow, it felt safer than anywhere else. "I need to tell you something," Salith said quietly. "Something I should have told you from the beginning." Jonas waited. No second-cycle Calorina has ever successfully stabilized their emotional lumen with another person, not in recorded history. She stared down at her hands, where faint traces of light flickered between her fingers. "We have tried. Families, partners, friends. It never works. The lumen is too personal, too reactive. Proximity to others usually makes it worse, not better." "But I make it better," Jonas said. "You make it disappear." Her voice cracked slightly. "Which should be impossible. Why did you not tell me?" "Because I was afraid you would realize how strange this is. How wrong. How much sense the Council makes when they say you are manipulating something you should not be able to touch." She finally looked at him. "I was afraid you would leave." Jonas processed that. "When did you start showing symptoms?" Salith was quiet for a long moment. 3 years ago. I was working as a cultural liaison. I loved my job. I loved people." Her shimmer pulsed sadly. "Then my second cycle began, and everything changed. The lumen appeared, small at first, manageable, but it grew, and the more people tried to help, the worse it got." "What did they do?" "My family tried to stay close. My mother would sit with me for hours, trying to calm the energy, but it fed off her worry, her fear. It amplified until the room itself started to shake, so Salith's hands trembled. Eventually, everyone agreed. Distance was safer, so I moved here to the Bixo district, where nobody cared enough to worry, where I could be alone without hurting anyone." "Salith, for 3 years, Jonas, I have been alone, watching the energy build, feeling myself fracture a little more each day. And every time I thought about reaching out, I remembered my mother's face when the windows cracked. I remembered how relieved everyone looked when I left." Jonas reached for her hand, and she let him take it. The light between her fingers softened immediately. "Then you sat next to me," she whispered. And for the first time the lumen did not fight. It just rested. They sat in silence while the wind picked up around them. "Kier sent me something," Jonas said eventually. "A file. Historical records." "What kind of records?" "Documentation of second-cycle incidents over the past 50 years. Every case, every report." Jonas pulled up his datapad. "The pattern is obvious once you see it. Every woman who developed unstable lumen was isolated. Every single one. And every single one got worse in isolation, which was then used to justify more isolation." Salith stared at the data. "That is a control mechanism," Jonas finished. "The rumors about dangerous Calorinas were not cultural. They were manufactured. A way to isolate women with power the Council could not control. But why? Because emotional lumen is powerful, and power in the hands of women who cannot be managed is threatening." Jonas scrolled through more files. "Look at this. 30 years ago there was a proposal to study partnered stabilization techniques. It was rejected by the Council as too dangerous, but the research notes suggest it was never dangerous. It was effective." Salith's shimmer flared with anger. "They have been lying." "They have been terrified," Jonas corrected. "Of you, of what you represent, of the fact that they cannot control something they do not understand. And now, they are using you to justify more control." Salith stood abruptly, pulling her hand away. The shimmer immediately began to fluctuate. Kier thought he was helping, but all he did was give them ammunition. He did not know It does not matter what he knew. She turned to face him, and there were tears on her face. Jonas, you need to leave. Not because I want you to. Because if you stay, they will destroy you. They will claim you damaged me, exploited me, turned me into some kind of dependent. Your career will be over, your reputation ruined, and I will still end up in that facility alone, wondering if any of this was real. Jonas stood. It was real. Then prove it by saving yourself. Her voice broke. Please, I cannot watch them hurt you because of me. Salith, I am not worth this, Jonas. I am broken. I have always been broken, and you cannot fix that by being kind. Jonas stepped forward, close enough that her shimmer washed over him like warm light. You are not broken. You are human. She laughed bitterly. I am not human. No, Jonas agreed, but you are a person, and persons are not meant to be alone. That is not weakness. That is biology. That is how we survive. He reached up, gently wiping a tear from her face. And maybe I cannot fix you, but maybe that is not what this is. Maybe we are just two people who needed each other, and we were lucky enough to find that. Salith closed her eyes. They will separate us anyway. Then we do not let them. How? Jonas did not have an answer yet, but he was starting to form an idea. Kier mentioned something, a place. Salith opened her eyes. What place? The Luminarium, where Colorinos test their emotional stability, where the Council evaluates second-cycle risk levels. No one goes there voluntarily, Salith said. It is designed to stress the lumen to breaking point, to prove you are dangerous. Or, Jonas said slowly, to prove you are not. Understanding dawned in her eyes, and with it, terror. Jonas, no. A human has never entered the Luminarium. The energy field alone could kill you. Then I guess we will find out if I am as stubborn as they say. Salith grabbed his arms. This is insane. Probably. Jonas smiled. But so is everything else we have done, and it has worked so far. She stared at him. At this ridiculous human who had walked into her life and refused to be afraid, who had decided that her loneliness mattered more than rules or safety or common sense, and she thought, not for the first time, that humans were the most terrifying species in the galaxy because they chose kindness even when it cost them everything. Okay, she whispered. We do this together. Together, Jonas agreed. And somewhere in the distance, Kier received a message that would change everything. Jonas made it to the transport station before his resolve cracked. He told himself he was doing the right thing. Salith would be safer without him. The Council would back off. She could go back to her managed isolation, and maybe eventually they would develop better treatments, better protocols. He told himself all of this, and none of it felt true. Where do you think you are going? He turned. Salith stood 20 feet away, her shimmer flickering erratically. The air between them rippled with visible distortion. Salith, you were leaving. It was not a question. Without saying goodbye, without even telling me. Jonas felt something in his chest break. I thought it would be easier. Easier. She laughed, and it was a terrible sound. For who? For you. If I leave now, they will not have a reason to institutionalize you. You can go back to what, Jonas? To being alone, to waiting for the day my lumen finally does what they have always said it would do? She took a step forward, and the platform beneath them groaned. Is that what you think I want? I think you deserve better than being used as ammunition against me. And I think you are a coward. Jonas flinched. Salith? No. Her voice was shaking now, and so was she. The shimmer around her was brightening, pulsing, becoming visible even in the harsh station lights. You do not get to make this decision for me. You do not get to decide that leaving is noble or kind or right, because it is not. It is you being afraid. I am trying to protect you. By abandoning me?" The platform shook harder. Other travelers were backing away, alarmed. "You think that is protection? You think I have not been abandoned enough?" Jonas stepped toward her instinctively, but she held up a hand. "Stay there." Her voice cracked. "Because if you come closer, I will break, and I cannot afford to break anymore." But it was too late. She was already breaking. The shimmer exploded outward, no longer soft or controlled. It was wild now, destructive, exactly the kind of energy discharge the Council had always warned about. The platform beneath them began to fracture, hairline cracks spreading like lightning through stone. Alarms blared. Security started evacuating the area. And Salith stood in the center of it all, tears streaming down her face, her lumen tearing itself apart. "This is what I am," she choked out. "This is what they were right about. I am dangerous. I am broken. And you were smart to try to leave before I hurt you." Jonas stared at her, and something clicked into place. A realization so obvious he could not believe he had missed it. She was not unstable because she was alone. She was unstable because she was about to be alone again. The lumen was not reacting to isolation. It was reacting to loss. "Salith," he said quietly. "Go, Jonas, please, before it gets worse." "No." She looked at him, confused, terrified. "What? I am not leaving." He started walking toward her, ignoring the cracks forming under his feet, ignoring the way the air itself seemed to burn with her pain. "I am not leaving you. You will die. Then I die." Phui, he was close enough now to see the disbelief in her eyes. "But I am not abandoning you, not for the Council, not for safety, not for anything. Jonas, you do not understand. I understand that you have spent 3 years being told you are dangerous, that you are too much, that you need to be isolated and controlled and fixed." He reached out and she tried to pull away, but he caught her hand anyway. The energy flared bright enough to blind. "But you were never the danger, Salith. They were. Every person who looked at you and saw a problem instead of a person. Every policy that treated your pain like a weapon. I cannot control this. You do not have to control it." He pulled her closer, and she collapsed against him, sobbing. "You just have to let me stay." The energy around them reached a crescendo. The platform cracked completely, a section of it falling away into the void below. And then, like a switch being flipped, it stopped. The shimmer faded. The air stilled. The only sound was Salith crying against Jonas's chest, her hands gripping his jacket like he might disappear if she let go. "I stay," he whispered into her hair. "I stay." She looked up at him, her face a mess of tears and light. "Why?" "Because you asked me not to leave, and because nobody should have to beg someone to stay." Around them, the evacuated travelers were staring. Security looked confused. The sensors, which had been screaming warnings moments ago, were now reading baseline normal. And in that moment, Salith Varun understood something fundamental. She was not broken. She had just been alone for far too long. "The luminarium," she said quietly. "We do it tomorrow." Jonas nodded. "Tomorrow. If we fail, we will not fail." "You cannot know that." "No," Jonas admitted. "But I can believe it. And right now, that is enough." She leaned her forehead against his. "You are insane." Probably." "And stubborn." "Definitely." "And exactly what I needed." Jonas smiled. "Lucky coincidence." Salith laughed through her tears, and this time the sound was not terrible at all. It was hope. Kir found them at dawn, sitting on their usual abandoned platform. "I heard what happened at the station," he said without preamble. "The entire district heard." Jonas glanced at him warily. And I owe you both an apology." Kir sat down, keeping a respectful distance. "I thought data would be enough. I thought if I showed them the truth they would change their minds. I was naive." You were trying to help, Salith said quietly. I was trying to be right. There is a difference. He pulled out his scanner. I have been analyzing the incident. Salith, your energy output reached levels that should have caused catastrophic structural failure. The platform should have collapsed entirely. But it did not, Jonas said. Because of you. The moment you touched her, the lumen redirected. Instead of dispersing outward, it cycled back into itself. Stabilized. That should not be possible without... He stopped. Without bonding. Salith frowned. Bonding. It is a theoretical concept. Ancient Calorino texts describe it, the idea that certain individuals can achieve resonance with a second-cycle lumen. Not suppression, not control. Harmony. Kier looked between them. I thought it was myth, but I am looking at proof that it exists. The luminarium would prove this? Jonas asked. The luminarium was designed to measure a Calorino's ability to maintain emotional stability under stress. It amplifies the lumen, forces it to its limits. If you can maintain bond resonance inside, the Council cannot claim manipulation or dependency. They would have to acknowledge that this is natural, sustainable. And if we cannot, Kier was quiet for a moment, then the energy discharge would likely be fatal. Salith took Jonas's hand. We do this anyway. I know. Kier smiled sadly. Which is why I am going to help. I still have access to the Luminarium facility. I can authorize an evaluation session, but it has to be tonight, before the Council realizes what we are planning. Tonight, Jonas repeated. They will try to stop you once they know. This is your only chance. After Kier left, they sat in silence. The sun was rising over the valley, painting the suspended platforms in shades of gold and rose. Are you afraid? Salith asked. Terrified, Jonas admitted. You? Yes. She leaned against his shoulder, but also hopeful. Is that strange? I think that is human. She smiled at that. You know what I realized? What? I have spent 3 years trying not to feel anything, trying to suppress every emotion because emotions fed the lumen, made it worse. She turned to look at him. But with you, I feel everything. Joy, fear, anger, sadness, and somehow that makes the lumen stable. How does that make sense? Jonas thought about it. Maybe the lumen was not reacting to your emotions. Maybe it was reacting to you fighting them, trying to be something you were not. And you let me just be? I let you be Salith, whoever that is. She was quiet for a long time. Then, I think I might be in love with you. Jonas felt his heart stop. Salith, you do not have to say it back. I just needed you to know. In case... She stopped. In case something goes wrong tonight. Jonas turned to face her fully. Nothing is going wrong tonight. You cannot know that. No, but I can know this. He took both her hands. Whatever happens in that luminarium, we face it together, and whatever comes after, we figure out together. Because you are not getting rid of me now. Salith laughed, tears forming in her eyes. You really are the most stubborn human I have ever met. I will take that as a compliment. They sat together as the sun climbed higher, hands intertwined, neither speaking. Words felt unnecessary. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of trust, of understanding, of something that neither of them had the language to name yet. Below them, in the market, something was changing. Young Calorinos gathered in small groups, speaking in low voices about the human and the woman with unstable lumen, about how she had nearly destroyed a platform and how he had walked into the storm and stopped it with nothing but presence, about how maybe, just maybe, the old ways were wrong. A petition started circulating, signatures collected, not many at first, but enough. Enough to make the council nervous, enough to make them realize that whatever happened tonight at the Luminarium would set a precedent they could not easily undo. As the sun set, Jonas and Salith made their way to the luminarium facility. Kier met them at the entrance, looking pale but determined. "Last chance to change your minds," he said. Jonas looked at Salith. She looked back, and in that moment, they both knew there was no other choice. There never had been. "We are ready," Salith said. Kier nodded and opened the door. The luminarium waited inside, silent and ancient, a chamber carved from crystal that had measured the hearts of Colorinos for generations. Tonight, it would measure something new. Tonight, it would measure what happened when loneliness finally found an answer. Jonas and Salith stepped inside together. The door sealed behind them, and the trial began. The luminarium was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Crystal walls stretched up into darkness, carved with patterns that seemed to shift when Jonas was not looking directly at them. The floor beneath their feet was smooth, reflective, like standing on frozen light, and in the center of it all, a raised platform where Colorinos had tested their emotional control for centuries. Salith stepped onto the platform, and the room immediately responded. The crystals began to glow, soft at first, then brighter, reacting to her emotional lumen. Patterns of light traced through the walls, reading her, measuring her, amplifying everything she felt. "It is starting," Salith whispered. Jonas stayed at the edge of the platform. Outside, beyond the transparent barrier, he could see faces, council members, observers, Kier with his equipment, and behind them, more Colorinos than he expected. Word had spread. This was not just an evaluation anymore. This was a judgment. The luminarium pulsed, and Salith gasped. Her shimmer flared bright, brighter than Jonas had ever seen it. The light traced patterns in the air around her, beautiful and chaotic. "It is amplifying everything," she said, her voice strained. "Jonas, it is too much." "Then let me in." "You cannot. The field will—" "Salith." Jonas stepped onto the platform. The moment his foot touched the surface, every crystal in the room blazed white. "Let me in." The luminarium did not like him. He felt it immediately. Pressure. Weight. Like standing at the bottom of an ocean. The air itself pushed against him, trying to force him back. His vision blurred. His chest tightened. This place was not made for humans. But Jonas kept walking. Outside, someone shouted. Kier was gesturing frantically at his scanner. The council members looked alarmed. Jonas did not care. He reached Salith just as her control began to slip. The shimmer around her exploded outward, no longer contained. It filled the chamber, wild and uncontrolled, and the crystals screamed in response. Light fractured. Shadows twisted. The walls themselves began to crack. Salith fell to her knees. "Jonas, get out. I cannot hold this. I cannot." He knelt beside her, taking her hand. The luminarium went silent. Every crystal, every pattern, every measurement. Frozen. Jonas felt it then. The lumen, not as light or energy but as emotion made manifest. Salith's fear, her hope, her exhaustion, her desperate, overwhelming need to not be alone anymore. And underneath all of it, something he had not expected. Love. "Breathe with me," he said quietly. "Jonas, just breathe. I trust you. You should not—" "I do not care what I should do." He squeezed her hand. "I care about what I am going to do, which is stay right here, with you, no matter what happens." Salith looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "Why?" "Because you asked me to, and because I meant it when I said I was not leaving." Something shifted. The lumen, which had been tearing itself apart, found a center, found an anchor, not in suppression or control, but in connection. The light began to change. Instead of chaotic bursts, it moved in patterns, waves, rhythms, and where Jonas's hand touched Salith's, the light split, became two streams instead of one, two sources moving together, synchronized, harmonized. Outside, Keir was frantically recording. The council members had gone completely still, because what they were seeing had never been documented. Dual resonance. The lumen was not stabilizing because Jonas was suppressing it. It was stabilizing because he was matching it. His presence, his emotions, his stubborn refusal to abandon her, had created a second harmonic, and the two together were stronger than either could be alone. The luminarium, recognizing the pattern, responded. The cracks in the walls sealed. The chaotic light settled into something breathtaking. The entire chamber began to glow with a warmth that had nothing to do with heat and everything to do with what humans called hope. Salith stared at their joined hands, where the light pooled and circled. "How is this possible?" "I have no idea," Jonas admitted. "But I am not questioning it." The chamber pulsed once more, a final measurement, and then went quiet. The evaluation was complete. The barrier dropped, and Keir rushed in, his scanner beeping frantically. "That was, I have never the readings." "Keir," Salith said gently. "Breathe." He took a shaky breath. "You just demonstrated sustained dual resonance in a high-stress environment. The Council cannot deny this. They cannot claim manipulation or dependency. This is biological, natural, real." One of the council members, the older one who had interrogated Jonas, stepped forward. His expression was unreadable. "Technician Halvern, Salith Varun." His voice was formal, but something in it had changed. "What you have demonstrated tonight contradicts centuries of established protocol." "Yes," Jonas said simply. "It suggests that our understanding of emotional lumen has been fundamentally incomplete." "Yes?" The council member was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, "It also suggests that we have caused a great deal of harm through ignorance." Salith spoke up. "What happens now?" "Now," the council member said, "we rewrite the protocols, because if a human can achieve what no Calorino has managed in generations, then perhaps the problem was never the lumen itself. Perhaps the problem was isolation." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it is worth, I am sorry. To you both." As the council filed out, the young Calorinos who had been watching erupted into conversation. Excited, hopeful, already planning how to spread what they had witnessed. Change had begun. And at the center of it all, Jonas and Salith sat together on the luminarium platform, hands still intertwined, watching their light paint patterns in the air. "We did it," Salith whispered. "We did," Jonas agreed. "What now?" He smiled. "Now we figure out what comes next. Together." And the light around them pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, like agreement, like home. 3 days after the luminarium, the High Council made an announcement that would change Caloris Prime forever. The isolation protocols for second-cycle Calorinas were officially revoked. Jonas stood in Salith's quarters, watching the broadcast with her. The council member who had apologized spoke with careful formality, but the words were revolutionary. "Our understanding of emotional lumen has been incomplete. Evidence now suggests that instability is not inherent to the condition, but rather a response to prolonged isolation. Effective immediately, we are implementing new support frameworks focused on connection rather than separation." Salith muted the broadcast. She had been quiet all morning, processing what this meant. "They are calling it the Halvern Protocols," she said softly. "After you." Jonas winced. "That seems excessive. You changed an entire planet's policy by sitting next to someone. I think your name is appropriate." She turned to look at him. "They want me to help develop the new training programs, to teach other second-cycle Calorinas about bonding, about how connection stabilizes rather than threatens. Are you going to do it?" "I want to, but—" She hesitated. "It means I will be visible. Everyone will know what I am, what we are." Jonas crossed the room, taking her hands. And I am afraid." And she admitted, "For 3 years I hid. Now I will be a symbol. What if I am not strong enough? Salith, you walked into the luminarium knowing it might kill you. You are stronger than you think. She leaned into him. Only because you were with me. Then I will keep being with you. He kissed her forehead. For as long as you will have me. That might be a very long time. Good, I am not going anywhere. Outside, the district was transforming in small but significant ways. Keir had published his full research, including the historical data showing how rumors about dangerous colorinas had been systematically encouraged by previous councils. The revelation sparked outrage among younger generations, who demanded accountability and change. Support groups formed. Colorinos who had been isolated began reaching out. And slowly, carefully, a new culture began to emerge. One where touch was not taboo but therapy. Where connection was not weakness, but strength. And at the center of it all, a human technician and a colorina with unstable lumen became proof that the old fears were just that. Old and wrong. 2 weeks later, Jonas received a message from the High Council. He was being offered a permanent position, not as a technician, as a balance partner, the first human to hold the title in Caloris history. It is a ceremonial position, Salith explained, reading the details. You would work with second-cycle calorinas, helping them develop stable resonance patterns, training others to be partners, building a framework for... She stopped. Jonas, they are asking you to stay, officially, permanently. Jonas looked at her. What do you want me to do? I want you to choose what makes you happy. Then I accept. Salith smiled, bright and genuine. Just like that. Just like that. He pulled her close. You think I am going to leave now, after all this? After everything? She laughed, and the sound filled the room with light. Literal light. Her lumen responded to joy now the same way it once responded to fear. And Jonas had learned that he loved seeing her happy more than almost anything. That evening they returned to the observation deck where they had first met. The same rusted railing, the same cold wind, but everything else had changed. Salith sat, and Jonas sat beside her, exactly as he had that first day. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her. Can I tell you something? She asked quietly. Always. When I was alone, I used to imagine what it would feel like to have someone just sit with me. Not trying to fix me, not afraid of me, just present. She tilted her head to look up at him. I never imagined it would feel this good. Neither did I, Jonas admitted. Can I keep doing this? Falling asleep on your shoulder when I am tired? Jonas smiled. You can. Always. Even when we are teaching others? Even when we are busy? Especially then. She closed her eyes, settling in. You know what the council is calling you in the market. I am afraid to ask. Either human who stayed. Jonas laughed quietly. That is not particularly creative. No, but it is true. She was silent for a moment. They said I was dangerous when lonely. They built an entire system around that fear. But you looked at me and saw something else. I saw you. And that made all the difference. Below them, the district lights began to come on as evening settled. Platforms glowed warm against the darkening sky. And somewhere in that vast network of suspended cities, other second-cycle colorinas were having their first conversations with potential partners, taking their first steps toward connection instead of isolation. Because one human had decided that loneliness was not acceptable, that no one should have to face their struggles alone, that sitting with someone in their darkness was not weakness, but the most powerful thing a person could do. Salith's breathing evened out. She had fallen asleep, just as she had done so many times now. And Jonas sat there, watching the stars appear one by one, thinking about how strange life could be. He had come to Caloris Prime to fix platforms. Instead, he had helped fix a system, and in the process, he had found something he had not known he was looking for. Purpose, connection, home. Somewhere in the distance, another human shuttle was landing. More technicians, more workers, but also more potential partners. More people willing to sit with the lonely, to stay with the struggling, to prove that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or resilience. It was the stubborn refusal to let anyone face their darkness alone. Jonas held Salith a little closer and thought, not for the first time, that maybe that was what made humans remarkable. Not that they were fearless, but that they chose connection over fear. Every single time, even when it cost them everything, especially then. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. But on a forgotten observation deck on Caloris Prime, two people proved something the universe needed to remember. That loneliness was not a state of nature. It was a failure of compassion. And humanity, for all its flaws, understood one fundamental truth. No one should ever have to be alone. Not if someone could sit beside them. Not if someone could stay. And humans always stayed. In the end, Jonas and Salith didn't rewrite Caloris Prime because they were heroic or chosen or bathed in cosmic destiny. They changed it because two lonely people made the smallest possible decision, not to walk away. Sometimes the universe tilts not through force, but through the quiet gravity of someone staying when every system says they shouldn't. And that's the uncomfortable truth this story drags into the light. The line between dangerous and misunderstood is often drawn by people who were never brave enough to sit close. Connection isn't magic. Connection is work. But it's also the only thing that has ever made a species worth surviving. Now, before this turns into a full philosophical lecture delivered by a man who still cannot fold a Calorino blanket correctly, let me hand the existential baton to you. When was the last time you stepped towards someone the world had quietly pushed aside? And what happened in that small collision of choices? How many fears in your life exist only because no one ever stayed long enough to understand them? And if dangerous when lonely applies to aliens, how much more does it apply to us humans stumbling around Earth with our hearts making questionable decisions daily? If you watched to the end, or at least pretended to, which is also a gesture of affection, type the symbolic word "stay" in the comments, because that's what changed everything on Caloris Prime. Tell me your city so we know where across this floating cosmic rock our crew is watching from. Hit subscribe, like, hyper-boost the video, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that nobody stabilizes alone. And don't leave yet. The next story is appearing on your screen right now, waiting to destabilize your emotions responsibly.